In this episode, I handpicked some stories sent in from viewers just like you. If you want to send in your story, check out the description below. First, we're going to hear from someone who took a road trip with his dad, and they couldn't believe what they saw on the highway. Next, we hear from a nurse about a patient who claims he went to hell and back. Finally, we finish up with the worst fly infestation you've ever heard of. So stay tuned and let's get to the stories. Hey Donovan. I always look forward to seeing the latest video you put out. I always watch your videos on my lunch break at work. I'm obsessed with anything to do with the paranormal, and I have been since I had this experience as a kid. My dad was driving and I was in the passenger seat. We were going to visit my grandparents for the weekend, something we used to do about twice a month. It was about a 2-hour drive up the Wyoming mountains surrounded by beautiful views and heavy woods. I always look forward to it because my dad and I could get some quality time together. On this night, it was very dark and a little foggy. My dad and I were making good time when we saw a man standing in the middle of the road. As we got closer, we realized that the man was completely naked. He was bald and didn't have any hair on his entire body. "Damn meth heads," my dad said, something he said quite often. On top of being completely naked, the man looked weird. He had no expression on his face and was very pale. He started walking towards the car and it made my dad and I uncomfortable. As he got closer, I saw the eyes were completely black. Not dark, I mean black and beady. Something was definitely not right about this guy. As the man got closer, my dad put the car in reverse and was going to drive by him and continue down the road. As we started driving backwards, the man started running at us. My dad floored it and the scariest thing happened. The man dropped on all fours and ran at us at a crazy speed. He was salivating all over his face, and his neck kept popping back disturbingly as he ran. As soon as there was a little distance between us, my dad slammed on the brakes, put the car in drive, and swerved around whatever was chasing us. The creature dove towards the car and got really close to my car door, but we were able to escape untouched. I will always remember its face, a short distance from my window looking at me. It was the most horrible thing I've ever witnessed. It had these nasty yellow teeth that looked really sharp, and its body was ghostly white and veiny. But the worst part is still those little black soulless eyes. I turned and asked my dad what that thing was, and he told me that's what happens when you take meth. It was a pretty quiet ride after that. We were both trying to figure out what the hell that thing was. My dad kept looking in the rearview mirror during the drive, and I know it was to make sure that that thing wouldn't get us. I mentioned to my dad that its neck moved around like crazy as it ran, and he explained that meth heads' bones deteriorate from the drug use, and it causes it to look like that. I mentioned the sharp yellow teeth, and he said that soon they will even get worse and fall out due to the drug use. I asked how he was able to run so fast on all fours, and he said that they lose strength in their legs and they must learn to run around like that. I asked why its eyes were so black, and he said that meth attacked the eyes and made people go blind. He had an answer for everything, so I just dropped it, but I never forgot about it. When we got to my grandparents, I told them all about it. I told them about its freaky eyes, bizarre teeth, and nasty skin, and how it charged us on all fours. And they told me it was just my imagination. That really hurt having loved ones accuse me of lying. But later, I figured out that they were just trying to calm me down and protect me. I remember when we were heading home, I asked my dad if we were going to see the creature again, and he pretended like he didn't know what I was talking about. When I explained the creature and how it charged at us, he told me that it must have been a vivid nightmare. I knew I wasn't going crazy, and I was pissed at my dad. But being a parent now, I kinda get it. Life's tough enough as it is. Can't have your children worrying about something they can't defend themselves against. Back then, my dad blew it off, but now we talk about all the possible things it could have been. This thing definitely had a face, and a creepy one at that. We really don't know what it could have been. Everyone I've told this story to has a different opinion of what it could have been. Some have claimed it's a creature called a crawler, and that thing apparently also runs on all fours. Some people have told me that it was just an animal, and the fog made it look like a humanoid creature, which is just insulting. If I'm lucky enough for you to share my story on your channel, thank you in advance. If anyone listening to this has any ideas what this could be, please don't hesitate to share it. It would be nice to finally get to the bottom of this once and for all. And it would be really nice to share the answers with my dad the next time I see him. Donovan, I listen to your channel all the time, and I figured it was about time for me to send in this crazy experience I had. Some of the stories I've heard you read have been absolutely nuts, so maybe people won't think that I'm bad writing this to you. I've been a nurse for many years, and this happened to me shortly after I became an ER nurse. We had a patient flown in from a car wreck. He was in rough shape, broken limbs, bruises, covered in blood, and severe head trauma, you name it. We tried to save him, but he died in the operating room. They declared his time of death, and we started prepping him to get him out of there. All of a sudden, he wakes up and gasps for air. We put him under and treated him for severe internal hemorrhaging. It was honestly a miracle that he survived the surgery. Afterwards, he went into a coma, but he was still alive. A few weeks later, I went in to check on his vitals, his fluids, and all that fun stuff. I kid you not, he woke up and looked me right in the eyes and started moving. He started flailing and panicking, so I called for help. We put him back under and removed his feeding tube and everything. He stabilized a little later and was in awful shape, but he was very much alive and alert. We put him on a morphine drip, but it looked like he was on a long road to recovery. Eventually, he started to improve. He was eating regularly, and he maintained a positive outlook. He was doing pretty well. One day I came to check on the Miracle Man. That was my nickname for him. He seemed like he was pretty good, and I was about to check on the next patient when he asked me something. Do you believe in heaven and hell? I wasn't the type to waste time on things that I couldn't understand, so I just responded, either something happens or nothing happens. Either way, we die. The next day I checked on him again, and he brought up the same subject. He explained that he always believed in an afterlife, but now he believes in heaven and hell. I told him that if I had died on the operating table and came back to life, I might feel the same way. I saw it, he said to me. I felt it. I asked him to explain what he meant, and he said, I felt the heat. I heard the screams. I saw it. I saw hell. I tried to put him at ease and told him that he just underwent a tremendous amount of stress and probably hallucinated. His words stuck with me though. I saw him dead for several minutes. Is it possible his soul left the earth and he saw hell? He requested to be wheeled into the hospital chapel several times a day and became obsessed with what he saw and experienced. Every time I'd visit him, he'd talk about how he didn't want to go back to hell and wanted to turn his life around before it was too late. A few months later, he eventually turned a corner and improved further. He left without many complications and is still doing well. That man found God and became a minister. He felt the need to uphold something that he saw when he died. So he dedicated his life to it, to do well and to do good. We still keep in touch today, and sometimes I go to his services. Thanks for your time, Donovan. Hey Donovan, your channel has interested me for quite some time now. I have something that I rarely tell people because it's awful, and it took me years to process it. I've owned a successful pest control company for 15 years now, and I'm proud to have built it from the ground up. I started with nothing, and now I have 50 employees and a near impeccable customer satisfaction rating. The incident I referred to happened to me in the first couple years when I started my business. I got a call from an elderly woman who complained about having a fly infestation. Elderly people always tug at my heart because my grandparents raised me, and they didn't have a lot of money. We had cockroaches, fleas, mice, and all kinds of pests, so I can't turn the elderly down no matter how bad the job is. Fly infestations typically mean the job will be nasty. Flies breed and feed in filth like trash, feces, spoiled food, and that kind of thing. I was expecting the worst, but willing to do my best for this woman in need. I drove over to her house, and it was a nice neighborhood and looked nice from the outside. She had a nice flower garden and a white picket fence that closed in the backyard. The house was probably built in the 1950s, but it looked like it was in great shape. But you can't judge a book by its cover, so I anticipated the worst inside the house. I knocked on the door and this sweetest little old lady answered the door. She mentioned she lived alone, and it was hard for her to go up and down the stairs. So she hadn't been down there in a while. This is what I was expecting to hear, so I told her I would take care of the problem. I asked her if the problem was exclusively in the basement, and she mentioned that sometimes they come up to the main level as well. I did some light routine spraying around to deter bugs from coming up, and sprayed the outside perimeter of the house with some heavy-duty bug killer. Now it was time to go downstairs, so I got all of my equipment on. When I opened the door to the basement, I was expecting the smell to be horrendous. But it didn't have much of a smell at all, just damp and old smelling. I walked down the stairs and turned on the light to the basement. There was lots of non-perishable food, but no real smell. I kept looking around, but I didn't find anything out of the ordinary. I also didn't see a single fly. I went upstairs and told the woman I was going to check up in her attic for bugs. She insisted they were coming from the basement. I told her I wanted to cover all the bases and climbed the ladder up into the attic. The attic didn't show any signs of infestation. There was an occasional dead bug, but it was much cleaner than I was expecting. I sprayed up there just to be safe and headed down back the ladder. I told the woman I didn't see any sign of infestation, and she said that they only come up at night. Keeping in mind that she was old, I told her that I sprayed and I took care of the problem, and that if she has any other issues to let me know. That same night I got a call from the same lady. She sounded scared and kept yelling, "They're coming, they're coming." So I got in my truck and I headed over to her house. I grabbed my gear and I knocked on the front door. She yelled, "Thank God you're here," as she opened the door. She brought me over to the basement door, and sure enough, there were lots of flies gathered around the basement door. I told her to get into the other room because I was going to spray. I sprayed the flies and they all dropped dead. I opened the basement door, and all the way down into the basement there were flies buzzing all around. I sprayed as I walked down, killing all the flies. Finally, I got downstairs and it was absolutely covered in flies. I had never seen so many flies. I sprayed and sprayed until finally I had to go to my truck and refill my tank. After refilling the tank, I grabbed a vacuum as well so I could suck up all the dead flies. I made my way down the stairs, vacuuming up all the flies along the way. As I got back into the basement, I must have been vacuuming up hundreds of flies every minute. It was unbelievable. Then, all of a sudden, all the lights went out and I saw a pale white glowing girl with long black hair. She had the most wicked look in her eyes. I was in total shock and it made me yell. Then the lights came back on and she disappeared. I ran upstairs and I was going to leave, but the thought of leaving that poor old woman alone with that thing just didn't seem right. Plus, I had left all my equipment in the basement. After about 5 minutes of catching my breath, I went back downstairs, finished vacuuming the flies up, sprayed again for good measure, and told the woman I was finished. About a week later, she called me and thanked me. She said that she hasn't seen a fly since, and that she would let her friends know about my services. I hung up the phone and tried not to give it any more thought, but I'll never forget that girl's face. Let me know what you think about these stories in the comments below. And don't forget to check out Donovan Dread True Crime. I try to release there several times a week. And also check out Lilith Dread. She releases almost every single day. Thanks and take care.